Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Stacy Heiligen-Thaler, and I'm the Chief Officer of Special Education and Student Supports here in Greenwich. Tonight is our presentation on the bridging process going from 8th to ninth grade. So this is a really exciting time. Your child is getting ready to go up to Greenwich High School and to, experience becoming a freshman, and we want to make sure to provide you all the supports and information that you would need to help make that successful. Tonight we have, in addition to myself, Miss Teresa Fox, who is our middle school special education program coordinator, and Miss Leah Zilich, our high school special education program coordinator. And they work together in order to make sure that the information from the middle schools get to the high school, and that we are set up on day one to make sure that your child is supported in their classes. So I'm going to turn this over to them.
Thank you, Stacy. So what is bridging? So bridging is the process of sharing information and creating a plan for each of the students that are moving from the middle school to the high school. The goal is for a very smooth transition from middle school to high school for each of our students. Teams make sure to consider all student needs to propose appropriate classes and goals and services. And this includes conversations related to academics, related services, social emotional learning, and post-secondary or transition goals.
All right. So, how is the high school different from the middle school? The answer to that is in a lot of ways, very, very different, but in some of the best ways. So, Greenwich High School is broken up into 5 houses. I kind of like to tell parents it's sort of like Hogwarts. So we have 5 different houses. There's Cantor, Clark, Bella, Folsom, and Sheldon. So before your student even arrives, they will be assigned a house and a special education case manager. And the house-based team is going to serve as that point of contact for you and your child throughout their high school experience. They stay in that house for the full 4 years. And within your house, you have a house administrator, an assistant dean, there's a social worker, a psychologist, and 3 special education teachers, in addition to all of the other general education teachers that are there as well. So it's a really well-supported crew that's there for you, and they're kind of your main people and will follow your student through all 4 years and make sure that they have everything that they need. So the next slide just goes into some of our support programs at Greenwich High School. So our most common support program is Academic Lab, which you may have heard referred to as resource room in other schools or in previous experiences. So that's where students receiving their specially designed instruction from a special education teacher. And that could be 3 times the cycle. We work on an 8-day cycle at the high school, which is a little different than the middle school. So Academic Lab could be 3, 6, 9, 12 times the cycle, depending on the needs of your child. We also have some more comprehensive programs for students with more significant disabilities. So we have our Trails program, which is for students with very significant disabilities, sometimes even, medical challenges. We have our RISE program, which is for students who are sort of in between. And then we have our Encompass program, which is predominantly for students who are identified as being on the autism spectrum. So that Academic Lab really focuses within that program on social skills, the zones of regulation through Michelle Garcia Winter's program. And all of these programs, they are more exclusive, I'll call it, but they're for our students with more significant disabilities. But all of the programs really make sure that the students are included in a general education capacity in some way, shape, or form, whether that's through electives or maybe through a co-taught class. We're always really looking at the high school to build that independence and foster that least restrictive environment and giving them that time with their non-disabled peers. We also have the Education and Wellness Center, which is classes that can be accessed by general education students or special education students. But the classes specifically in the Wellness Center that are taught by special education students, taught by special education teachers, are for special education students. But we do offer other content area classes like science or health that might have a smaller class size that general education students could be in if they needed that smaller setting and that support. The Education and Wellness Center focuses a lot on like wraparound services. So they have their own psych and social worker within that program. And the classes, as I said, are much smaller. And some of those content area classes are taught by a special education teacher. I keep saying student. I apologize. They're taught by a SPED teacher, not a student. We also have co-teaching at the high school, which is very exciting. We offer co-teaching in ELA and math and social studies and in science. We have our STARS class, which is students with executive functioning concerns or challenges. We have some reading support classes. So if your child struggles with decoding or comprehension or fluency or accuracy, we have classes that support your child in that area. And then we have Effective School Solutions, which is an outside agency that we bring in that is comprised of clinicians that work with students who have, significant mental health concerns. And they are, as I said, an outside agency, but they work in tandem with all of our programs. So that's sort of everything in a nutshell. These programs are outlined on our Greenwich High School website if you want some more like specific details. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me directly. I am, as Stacy said earlier, the coordinator of the high school special education programming.
So when does bridging occur? So we have been working on preparing for bridging probably since September when we came back to school. But we really start with the high school, from the middle school to the high school, with that planning in January. In January, we have representatives that I've worked very closely with the assistant principals in the middle schools to determine who from the middle school we want to meet with each of the high school personnel to discuss programming and the continuum of supports. In February, the coordinators work with the assistant principals to determine the students who might need a more specialized programming, and we set up sharing times. High schools may send staff to observe students at the middle school, and we also will have some of our special education or related service providers go up to the high school to see the programming that's going on. In March, after reviewing caseloads and IEPs of incoming students, the high school case managers will complete the PPT request forms, and they'll get all of that information out. So you will start to get invitations towards the end of March, beginning of April, for the PPT bridging. And we continue to do our visits and our sharings throughout the month of March. In April and May, that's when we're going to have our bridging PPT meetings, where we will come together with the high school team with you to participate in a PPT to talk about what the IEP will look like and what the services will look like at the high school. So I would encourage you to really start to think now of questions that you might have about the high school that you can ask during these bridging PPT meetings, if it's related to services or anything like that, that you may want to know and have answered at that PPT meeting.
So Teresa stole my thunder a little bit there, but you might be wondering how you can participate in the process. And it really is important for you as a parent and also, your child to participate in this PPT process. So you can go to the next slide, Teresa. So I would encourage you to, come to the PPT ready with questions, ready with maybe some ideas that you've had after maybe looking at our course of study guide on the high school website. Think about life beyond high school. We like to talk about, thinking with the end in mind. So like, what is your ultimate goal for your student? Do you want them to attend a college? You want them to attend a post-secondary program? Do you want them to attend a vocational program? So having those things in mind are really helpful, so that right from the get-go, we know what your child and your end goal is ultimately once they're through the 4 years, or maybe they continue on past 4 years through Greenwich Public Schools. And also definitely encouraging everyone to attend any, in-person events, virtual events. The high school, I know, has put on a lot of things thus far. So just getting any kind of hands-on action from the high school that you can get. I know a lot of things have been being sent out. Any experiences that you can be a part of, any meetings that you can be a part of. And then just, of course, never hesitating to reach out to any of us with any questions that you have for your student, and really talking to your child about, okay, like, you're entering a totally new environment, which is much larger than a middle school. We have close to 3,000 students. So kind of talking to them, like, what do you think you're going to need to be successful in that environment? And then bringing those things to the table at the PPT is always really helpful. So there will be some changes on your child's IEP. So first of all, just logistically, the dates. So the services for middle school will end on June 30th, 2024. And then the new services will begin on July 1st. Even though we're not in session, then that just means that there's no overlap in services on the IEP. The service delivery will look a little different. I said previously, we operate on an 8-day cycle. So that's a little different than like 5 times a week, academic lab or resource room 5 times a week. We do it per cycle. So we usually like to line up, and we work with the middle school saying like, hey, you get special education support with the special ed teacher maybe 3 times a week. At the high school, that might be equivalent to, 3 times or 6 times a cycle. And those are things that you'll talk about in the PPT. And then, of course, some courses. There are obviously, your general education or elective courses. Those won't be on the IEP, but things like academic lab, where your child's receiving that specially designed instruction, will be on the IEP. Also, we do offer some courses, as I mentioned previously, that are taught by a special education teacher, such as a reading class that might be indicated on the IEP. Co-teaching might be indicated on the IEP as well. So it's really, that PPT is a conversation for you to have with your child and the team. It's an opportunity to share, what everybody needs to know about your child, and then also like what you think is going to be helpful for them moving forward to be successful in a different environment.
Some of our frequently asked questions. When do I get to discuss specific courses and electives for my student? So this will happen outside of the bridging process, with the exception of the need for special education specific course, such as an academic lab or a co-taught class. And you'll work with the school counseling team on specific schedules. So my student wants to go to college. How can I be sure that they're taking the correct courses? The school counselor will attend the bridging PPT and serve as part of your child's school team. The PPT, we try to keep the meeting focused on IEP needs. Therefore, a conversation about scheduling and graduation requirements would most likely occur after the PPT. And with the very same as the middle school, the school counselor, and Leah, correct me if I'm wrong, will follow your child throughout the high school experience. So whoever you start with in ninth grade will continue through 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. So they really get the opportunity to know your child. So if you have any questions at all regarding the bridging process, please feel free to reach out either to myself or to Leah. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, and I just also dropped the course of study guide in the chat in case you want to explore that ahead of the PPT. That kind of outlines some of the classes that I was referring to previously. So I think that concludes our slideshow. So we will stop the recording now and allow for any questions that anyone might have. And